Hello, everyone. Welcome to POZ at Home and welcome to my home. I'm Oriol Gutierrez, editor-in-chief of POZ Magazine. Thanks for joining us tonight. Happy New Year to all of you. We're living through strange times, but that doesn't change the fact that it's a new year, and with a new year, there's always conversation about personal concerns, and we're no different, people living with HIV. Weight gain is definitely top of the list for so many of us, myself included. I've certainly had my bouts over the years. In this conversation, we have two guests that are going to join us very soon. We hope to have a lively discussion. We'll have Q&A later, and so please, put your Q&A in the participant section there. We look forward to answering some questions. We'll also have a break in between. So just to set up kind of what we're doing here, we are talking about weight gain and New Year's resolutions, but the New Year's resolutions part is more in the context of this one particular subject, weight gain. So I just kind of want to set up a little bit of what we'll be talking about later. We're going to talk about the three causes of fat: poor diet, lack of exercise, side effects from HIV meds, side effects from living with HIV. All those things really play into it. We're going to talk about two types of fat, normal fat and something called visceral fat, and we'll definitely get into that much more. The diet and the exercise, of course, are really important for normal fat. And then, sometimes there might be a need for medication for visceral fat. So we'll also kind of explain all that. And especially the importance of talking to your doctor about exercise, excessive visceral fat. And so those are big words, and that's why I tripped up there, excessive visceral fat. We'll get into all of that. Liz Highleyman, who is our science editor, will unpack all of that. She's one of our guests. Our other guests, who we're very happy to have, is Lepena Reid. She's a longtime community activist. She was actually on the cover of a special issue on weight gain. So we are happy to have her here. She is a community grassroots advocate living with HIV. She's a speaker, a blogger, a leadership coach, and a founder of a Survivor's Keys consulting services. She's also a certified community health educator. And as I mentioned, Liz Highleyman is the POZ science editor. She's been a health journalist and a medical editor for more than 20 years. We're happy to have both of them on this episode. So let's say hello. Please bring them on.
Hi, Oriol.
There's Liz. Hi, Liz. How are you?
Good. How are you?
Happy New Year to you.
Thank you.
All right. So hopefully we'll be seeing Lepena in the near future. In the meantime, I guess we'll work out some of that technical difficulty there. I do want to kind of reemphasize with you, Liz, the idea of the causes of fat, the type of fat, understanding the difference. I think that's really important, correct?
Yeah. It's an interesting question, and it's one we don't really fully understand at this point. It's like, as you know, early in the early days of HIV, wasting was the more common hallmark of AIDS, but today, more people living with HIV are struggling with overweight, and probably multiple reasons for it. First, like the population as a whole, many HIV positive people have lifestyle risk factors like not eating a healthy enough diet or not getting enough physical activity, but that doesn't seem to be the whole explanation. As we go to conferences and read from medical journals, like more and more studies showing that people starting treatment with modern HIV drugs, not the old ones that were known to cause different types of side effects, have excess weight and fat buildup. And as you mentioned, there's two main types of fat. One is the subcutaneous fat, which sort of sits under your skin. It's soft and pinchable. It's often builds up around your belly or hips or thighs. And then there's the visceral fat you talked about, which is sort of deep within the abdominal cavity, surrounding the organs. And that, it pushes against the the abdominal wall, and people can have a very, like, feels like they have a really hard belly when they punch it.
Right. Well, let me pause you there, Liz, because I know that you have a whole lot more to say on that. So Lepena has joined us, and we're happy that the technical
Hello,
difficulties are worked
welcome.
out.
And
Hi, Lepena. We're
yes,
happy to have you here.
thank you for inviting me and being a guest
Yeah.
tonight at POZ at Home. Thank
Yeah,
you.
we're so happy that you could be on the cover of our special issue. It's not an easy subject to talk about, and so thank you so much for coming forward and sharing your story with us. So we'll get back to more of the technical stuff, Liz, in a second. But why don't we start with you, Lepena? You know, you have a very compelling personal story just as a long-term survivor, but particularly, obviously, you're here today to also talk about some of the weight gain issues. You tested positive in 1988.
Yes.
Tell us about your journey.
Well, yeah, I tested positive in 1988, but I didn't begin treatment for about 15 years. And the reasons for that, I felt that the medications were harsh. The cocktails were many, sometimes 30 pills daily. And I just made the decision that I didn't want to take myself through that. So for 15 years, I didn't take medications. When I did begin to take medications, and in 2016, I completed a 90-day regimen for hepatitis C, and my final report said your liver functions are in a normal level. And that was just, I had no words for it. I was elated to think
that's pretty amazing.
That science was moving so forward. And at that time, I thought that it was time for me to start medication. So after a stay in the hospital, my health had gone down a bit. I talked with my doctors, and around 2016, they said that there are medications now that are just one pill, one time a day. So I did some research on it, and I said, yes, you know, let's do it. It seems simple enough now.
Yeah. So let's talk more about that. So you're on the new medication. So what happens from there forward?
Well, yeah. So the medications were, you know, I felt so elated about it. You know, I felt so good that the science was moving forward, and I always had a baseline comfortable weight that I stayed on, and I had healthy plan choices. I planned healthy meals. I did cardio. I worked out on a regular basis. I walked daily. And I was feeling pretty positive about my lifestyle and the activities that I was incorporating. But when I went back to the doctor after 3 months, they wanted to see how I was doing. I had gained 5 pounds. So I wasn't really alarmed about that. You know, a 5-pound gain was okay. But now 3 years in, my weight has increased 25 to 27 pounds.
Yeah.
And
that's a big difference. I've been there. You can tell the difference in your body. Absolutely.
And where it's showing is in my thighs, my waist, and my belly, most of all.
Yeah. So tell us a little bit about how you've addressed that in your life.
Well, I've become quite disheartened at some points because I have a healthy, you know, I have a healthy, lively, active life where I do pursue exercise, where I do walk on a regular basis, where I do plan healthy meal choices. So now I kind of don't know what to do. I've asked my doctor about it. They say to increase, you know, your exercise. They ask, are you really, you know, doing exercise? And you ask anyone and they know, you know, that I am active, and I always have been conscious of the food that I eat. You know, I drink water mostly, only healthy juices. So I don't.
Yeah, it's frustrating. It's absolutely frustrating.
Yeah,
I can hear it.
puzzling.
No, yeah, and it's frustrating for all of us that deal with it. In sharing your story with us, in that pause focus, I think that you had mentioned something about, considering changing medication to actually address the issue as well. Can you share a little bit about that?
Well, yes, I have talked with that to my doctor about that. We still are, they're still negotiating, like, where can I go with it? Telling me that, asking again the question, am I exercising? Am I really doing these things? And I tell them that, yes, I am. So it's an ongoing, concern right now.
Yeah. So you're in the middle of it, and
Yeah, because as I'm aging and other comorbidities come about, with heart, kidneys, and right now just even, just mental health, because it really
mental health has been a big deal for all of us the last year. No doubt about it. So why don't we just pause there and kind of just switch over to you, Liz, and pick up on the conversation we were having, because obviously Lepena is kind of not alone in this, where people are kind of figuring out, well, what is really going on here. So why don't we just kind of unpack? So what causes weight gain in people with HIV?
Well, that's the $1 million question. We really don't know exactly why we're sort of seeing this now. It's after people like Lepena, go on treatment after not being on it a long time, you expect to gain a little bit of weight as you get healthier, but what we're seeing is it goes well beyond that often, and beyond your diet and exercise. HIV itself can cause, ongoing immune activation and inflammation, and that happens even in people who are on effective treatment and, have an undetectable viral load, and that can, contribute to metabolic changes that promote fat gain. So it's like living with HIV. The meds used to treat it. It's sort of what we've seen over the past maybe 5 years is that weight gain happens in people who it can happen in people who take any sort of HIV meds, but it seems to be most often linked to integrase inhibitors, which is one of the newer types of antiretroviral, and the newer version of tenofovir. So, and this can happen either when people start treatment for the first time or when they switch from an older regimen to a newer one. And we have seen that, women are more likely to gain excess fat after starting new meds, as are Black people. And combining that, Black women are especially at high risk. And in fact, some researchers are saying, because women and people of color have been so underrepresented in clinical trials of new medications, that's maybe why we didn't see this problem earlier. It's just sort of now coming to light. But now that now that people with HIV and their doctors are more aware of the problem, they're looking at it more. It's being included in more studies, and it's become a really active area of research.
Yeah. Well, that sounds like a really good spot for us to just kind of pause, take a commercial break, and we'll come back and pick up with the conversation. We're back. Thanks for hanging out with us. So let's pick up on that last point you were making, Liz, about who is most likely to gain weight. So did we kind of cover that?
I think we pretty much did. It's like the studies have seen it in all sorts of groups of people, but Black women seem to be especially prone to this, and people taking, like I said, the new integrase drugs and a new version of tenofovir. And yeah, it's still really unclear what it is about the meds that, especially the integrase inhibitors, what are they doing in the body that promotes fat gain? And that's something that researchers really don't fully understand yet.
Yeah. So, Lepena, you had already mentioned some ways that you're trying to manage your weight. So, Liz, I just would ask you, what are some ways to manage weight gain?
Well, I want to start with what experts would say, do not do. I mean, it can be tempting to sort of either delay treatment for HIV or to not take it regularly because, if you feel like it's contributing to weight gain. But there's so many health benefits for being on treatment that, keeping HIV under control is really the most important thing you can do for your overall health. So, if you're concerned about weight gain, talk to your doctor. Don't just stop treatment. And if you're not on treatment, don't let that be a reason to not start. And as Lepena's situation demonstrates, managing weight gain is really difficult. Changing HIV medications often doesn't really seem to do much to reverse weight gain or fat accumulation, even if, it maybe weight gain started after you began taking these drugs. Stopping them doesn't mean it's going to go away. And, diet and exercise can be helpful for some people. And, we've all heard the advice about eating fruits and vegetables and whole grains and avoiding, a lot of sugar and unhealthy fats and processed foods. But lifestyle changes often aren't enough to get people to the weight they want. And they do tend to reduce this sort of soft subcutaneous fat under the skin more than they reduce that excess visceral abdominal fat. So that can be very hard to lose. There is one medication called Agrifta SV that's approved for reducing that excess visceral fat in people with HIV positive people with lipodystrophy, which was something we saw, it can involve both weight gain and weight loss, but that it's specifically weight gain, visceral fat gain that Agrifta has been shown to work to reduce. And there's some evidence from studies that it may also help reduce visceral fat gain after starting new HIV medications.
Yeah. It's complex, isn't it? And Lepena, you can kind of testify further to that.
I'm determined, that I'm not going to lose, this battle also. I mean, I'm almost 30 some years in and living and mostly healthy. So it's not going to stop me here. And I say that to anyone else that's listening in tonight. Take charge as you have done, with your diagnosis, change your diet, get the rest, all the things that, they say are to do. It's important enough to manage those things and to move forward on them immediately.
Absolutely. So just a reminder, we are taking questions. So if you have any, please drop them in down below there on your screen. And in another minute or two, hopefully we'll start getting to them. So Lepena, I am curious about, what next steps you might take. Obviously, you're considering new medication, and that might address the visceral fat. But let's talk a little bit about the normal fat. So you are into wellness. I guess I'm curious as to other things you might be doing along those lines.
In terms of my diet, there is sort of something that's new out there per se, intermediate meals where you only eat during 9 hours out of the day. And I plan a healthy meal during that time. My focus is really on looking at how to balance my body and the structure of it together, because I feel those are some of the necessary components. I just feel that just naturally, because the exercise is there, the the activities, you know, are there, and the weight is still, the weight's still there too. So-
Right. Yeah.
And beyond all of that, you know, I'm not going to let that down, because my levels are still, you know, my counts are very good, and undetectable. So I'm really, you know, grateful for all of that in the middle of the weight gain.
Yeah.
But actively, what I'm doing as being a member of a women's organization for women living with HIV Positive Women's Network, I feel that there's mobility and change that we can make to this by talking with your doctors more. I mean, at one time, everyone might feel just like HIV, that I'm the only one that this is happening to. And I felt like that until I began talking with other people and sharing if they were gaining any weight, and others told me that the same things were happening with them. So talk with your doctor, discuss it. Don't just continue with that. Continue a healthy plan, a healthy weight plan, as much physical activity as you can handle. Everybody, you know, has their own personal level. I can't really say what to do that will work for you. And as a member of PWN, again, we certainly will push the policy issues and action for change for research and for community-based participatory research and clinical trials that we could become a part of, especially as brown and Black women.
Absolutely. Absolutely. So why don't we start with some questions? I do have one. So Liz, you know, what are some health problems associated with weight gain?
Okay. Yeah, the weight gain, especially the visceral fat, is the visceral abdominal fat is a bigger health concern than the subcutaneous fat. It can increase the risk of cardiovascular disease, diabetes, and any number of, you know, metabolic problems. And it can contribute to fatty liver disease, where your liver fills up with fat, and over time that can, you know, can contribute to cirrhosis and liver cancer. That's probably, you know, especially important for someone who's also living with hepatitis C, like Lepena was. And congratulations on your treatment. It's so good to hear those stories, because it's, new drugs made such a difference. And then, you know, the obesity contributes to several other types of cancer, as well as liver cancer. Being overweight can contribute to complications during pregnancy. And as Lepena's, you know, story tells, it's can have a negative effect on people's self-esteem and contribute to depression and isolation. And like we alluded to earlier, it may make some people, you know, less willing to stick to their HIV meds, which can, you know, cause a host of other health problems. So yeah, definitely anything you can do to control, especially the visceral fat, is great for your overall health.
Yeah, absolutely. So, you know, kind of picking up on, I guess the mental health aspect of this, there's, I'm just going to combine a couple of queries that we got in. So, you know, when it comes to weight gain and how it impacts mental health, maybe Lepena, you could kind of give us a little bit more of your kind of insights on that and how you manage that.
Oh my goodness, it's for one thing, and I'll just, you know, throw this in. You know, I can't afford a whole new wardrobe, so.
Yeah.
So what do I do about that? Right now, we're all really kind of at home, so it's working out like that. But no, on the serious level, you really lose confidence. You lose confidence about, well, you really lose the confidence because you feel that, well, for me, I feel that I'm doing all that I can do, and I'm not seeing, you know, really any change. And I have seen increase more than decrease when I think that I'm doing all the right things with my food and with my diet. So
yeah, absolutely.
It brings on, you know, real depression.
Yeah. So actually, there is another question for you, Lepena. So if I can distill this to, basically the idea of interacting with your doctor. We mentioned earlier the importance of, asking your doctor, about excessive visceral fat, and of course asking your doctor about living with HIV generally. But the question here is, like, have you found like your concerns to be minimized? And I think that probably is a lot of people could relate to that, perhaps. And
Yes.
like maybe it's being chalked up to aging or other factors. Can you share a little bit about your experience?
Exactly, and that's the point that I'm making when you asked earlier, how am I talking with my doctor? When I initially, shared the concern with them, all I got back was, well, do you exercise? What are you eating? And they know me, I mean, the two doctors that I'm talking about, case in point is my primary doctor, who sometimes I'll bring in another condition that I have, and I know many women might have that issue too, is my thyroid. So of course, sometimes thyroid can bring on different components of weight. So that popped up, but yeah, it got dismissed on several visits, but I was persistent about it. And I'm still persistent about it, that these things, and sometimes the doctors, with research and the things that we know, sometimes, the doctor itself aren't aware of these things, and you have to bring your information to them.
Yeah. So I think we're kind of getting close. So I'm going to hand over a couple of questions to Liz, and then ask kind of a final question to the both of you before we say goodnight. It seems like we got a couple of more sciencey related things. So perhaps, Liz, you can interpret them. One is about related to lipoatrophy. And so why don't you take it? You got access to the questions here.
Okay. Yeah, the question is about the kind of combination of a gain of belly fat accompanied by a loss of fat in the limbs and face, which is known as lipoatrophy, and that's something that has especially been seen in long-term survivors, and it's largely connected to some of the really early medications that aren't used very much anymore. But it seems to be, it's still a problem. The people that had that lipoatrophy and, the combination of fat buildup and fat loss in different parts of the body, it's really hard to change that. It seems to be permanent or semi-permanent in many people, unfortunately. And then this new phenomena of weight gain with newer meds sort of adds to that. But I haven't seen anything that the newer meds specifically cause this lipoatrophy or fat loss, but the people that had it already, it may not ever really reverse itself. And there was another question asking whether this treatment-related weight gain happens to men as well as women, and yes, it definitely does. It seems to be more common in women, but definitely numerous studies have shown that it's a problem for men as well.
Yeah, something we all have to consider. So, I guess as a wrap-up question, I mean, again, New Year's, right? And it's a new year, new day, things to consider for the next 12 months. And so do either of you have any kind of health related, New Year's resolutions for 2021? For myself, I definitely want to keep off the weight and do more exercise and try and just live a little more healthy. Last year, I'll be honest, was brutal as far as that goes. Dealing with mental health last year with everything that was going on, I certainly let myself go a little bit. So I definitely want to improve this year. So that would be it for me. Liz?
Yeah, I'm actually maybe in the minority, as I'm not much of a cook, and during this last year of COVID, I managed to lose a little weight because I wasn't going out to eat at restaurants anymore, and I was getting more outdoor activity because the other kinds of things I usually did, I wasn't doing. So my big resolution for the year, and one I was terrible at last year, was getting enough sleep and getting good quality sleep. So that's my top goal.
Yeah, sleep is good. How about you, Lepena?
Well, my practice of mindfulness and gratitude. So those are things, you know, I said in the article that I'm still alive. And so with that, I can build my life as I want to, or as I can best do it. I will continue, you know, the exercise regimen that I have done all along. I love to walk, so it really isn't an issue for me to walk. And I do live in the state of Florida, so I am close to beaches, and it doesn't matter if the weather is a little, you know, chilled. I still like to go because it relaxes, and it opens up, and it releases, you know, many things. So I will continue those things, and I will continue this topic and this subject with anyone that wants to share with me or wants to ask me any questions. And I certainly am not stopping with my doctors and moving forward actions and change on research and other things for myself and for other women and the whole population. Yeah.
Well, thank you so much, both of you, for sharing with us. I think that this topic is one of those things that's just, we're kind of at the beginning of it and just starting to learn more. And I'm looking forward to addressing it as we move forward. So thanks again to everyone out there. Have a good night. We wish you well. See you next time.
Be well, be safe.